Hi, so people seem to enjoy this sort of video last time, so I'm gonna try doing it again. However, this time, as you can see, I'm not driving, I'm just sitting in my car because people did not enjoy the fact that I was driving a car and trying to record a video at the same time and were afraid I was going to crash and die. Which I did not, in my defense, but also that's a fair concern. I'm gonna try and make this short, which I'm not good at doing, so it probably won't be short, but basically, although I know I should not be going on Twitter, and for the most part do not go on Twitter, sometimes I give in and I do go on Twitter and I scroll a little bit, and I just happened to see a few days back, the discourse for the day was about an article from, I don't remember the author, I don't remember where it was posted, but it was some article about basically about Valve's responsibility when it comes to curation and what that may or may not be. The point of the article, after clickbait and a lot of filler, was basically that the author believed that it would be better for players and developers if Valve had a human group of people who were basically going through new releases and deciding which ones were worth elevating and which ones kind of were just garbage and not worth, you know, like asset flips and stuff like that. Which is, it's a reasonable take, but one which I don't agree with, and I was glad to see that a lot of other developers also do not agree with. And I want to try and outline some reasons why I don't agree with that, and why I think that any sort of walled garden, whether that be a hard brick wall of pre I think 2014, whenever Greenlight was, pre-Greenlight Steam, where Valve was basically handing out tickets to success. If you were released on Steam, you were probably going to be quite successful. If you were among the majority who was not on Steam, you probably weren't going to be selling your games, at least on PC. And, yeah, I can't remember where I was going with that. But anyway, I wanted to outline why oh yeah, walled garden. So that's like a hard walled garden. And then in this case, this is representing something that I would consider still a walled garden, in the sense that if you have a curated list of these are the things that are worth your time, anything that isn't on, if that list is actually successful at what it does, and it actually is showing people mostly things that they are interested in, then that list effectively becomes a walled garden. If you're not on that list, even if you're on Steam, you're kind of getting shut out. If the list is inclusive enough that anything that isn't just straight up scammy or asset flip or doesn't work or things like that is on that list, well then that list is really not doing anything for anyone. With there are, despite people talking about Steam being overrun with shovelware and things like that, even as someone who goes looking for shovelware, it's, at the very least, it's not more than half. And so that to say, in my experience, it's not more than half of what I see. In fact, it's significantly less. And usually what I'm seeing is a whole lot of games that look completely competent and fine, and I have zero interest in playing. So anyway, the reason I don't like this is primarily as a developer. I think as a player, there's not, unless you're someone like me who really is into obscure, weird, very indie stuff, there's not that much of a disadvantage to have it to a walled garden storefront, and I think there are a lot of players who would prefer that because it means less garbage they have to wade through. Which I can't really argue against. I guess that makes sense. Primarily, I don't like it as a developer because, well, there's a lot of different angles you could talk about it from. To summarize it, I'm going to try and make it concise and clear. if we're talking about a storefront that is curated, your success is it's being determined by a very small group of people. Sometimes that small group of people may be able to let niche weird things in. I think it is far more likely that the weird stuff, and Cruelty Squad was of course the game everyone brought up during this discourse, but there's other games too. There's like, talk about something like Blood and Bacon, which is a 99-cent game that looks like it could be a low-effort asset flip, but is actually really fun and really quite good for 99 cents. Or the other example I thought of was Witch Hunt, which looks like an asset flip in the sense that it uses a lot of pre-made assets, and unless you played the game, it could very easily be mistaken for any number of other actual asset flip games that on the surface look professional because of the assets they're using, but are actually just garbage, basically. So there's a lot of examples of games that could slip through the cracks. Now, in the opposite extreme, which would be something sort of similar to what Steam is now, but even more so, it would be the opposite extreme where it's success, there literally anything is let on. In that case, there's still a lot of things that can slip through the cracks, because then you're having to play the algorithm game, or you're relying on luck, and it's very much the problem of discoverability. In that case, though, so the success that you might find is in some way determined by luck, but it is also more crowdsourced, I guess you could say. Just put as a developer, I'm gonna switch hands because my arm's getting tired. Just from a developer point of view, if I'm making and releasing a game, you're always going to be rolling the dice on whether that's going to be good or not. But I would much rather roll the dice in a situation where the general gaming public is kind of more determining that, because that's a more direct, like, if you understand the market and understand that, okay, there is a demand for this sort of game, even if it's a small niche of some sort, if you're able to get the game to that niche of people, and you understand the market you're making the game for, it's actually fairly reliable. Like that's a lot more reliable than, like, well, if I don't manage to impress whatever random person on the 30-person team is looking at games and deciding what's worthwhile and what isn't, then I'm screwed. And so really the main problem you face in an ecosystem that is basically crowdsourced curation, which is what Steam tries to do, where it's heavily driven by algorithms and by player reaction. In that case, what you're what was I going? I'm sorry, I lost it. In that case, it's a little more reliable, and something that I think is a lot more fair than just having that dice roll be one person and whether they think your game is worthwhile or not. And even if the bar here is just that, like, okay, well, the game shouldn't be an asset flip, and it should actually work properly and stuff like that. It is hard to determine the worth of something even at that level. Like, all of those games I listed, well, not all of them, there's only two, but those two, and there's others I've played also where it's like, it could be mistaken for an asset. This is a game that actually this was a big problem for it. It was Slayer Shock, that's a while back. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but it accidentally looked like an asset flip to sort of undiscerning eyes, despite the fact that it was really as far away from an asset flip as you could possibly get, to the point where the developer made their own engine that they were using. Like, it was less of an asset flip than anything I've ever made. But so my point being that, like, even when the bar is really low, it's still possible for someone to make those mistakes. And it's not that, again, it's not that things don't fall through the cracks in the way the ecosystem is now, because they absolutely do. But when it gets to which system is more reliable for, if you have this, and this way, then the results are going to be this, and this. I think the way that what Steam is trying to do is a little more reliable for that. And that kind of gets me to the crux of this, which is what you see the responsibility of the storefront being. And I think the main problem here is that there's kind of two separate camps. And two separate schools of thought, one of which being the point of the storefront is to determine what has value and what doesn't, and only show customers things that have value, and only give that ticket to success to things that have value. So I think there's obviously a lot of players who feel that way. I think there's also a lot of developers. And I will say, quite frankly, I think a lot of developers who feel that way secretly feel that they pass the has value check, and other games that have had success do not pass it. Or put more simply, they feel that their games are better than games that have been successful, and they're bitter about it. Just to be perfectly honest, I think that's where a lot of developers are coming from who feel that way, which is understandable. I have also been there. It sucks. But the other school of thought, which is where I come from, is that the storefront is there as a host location, a place where developers and players meet up, basically. The storefront is the place where you get to connect with players, and the storefront should not shut anything out. Rather, the storefront should have tools and options and things like that in place to benefit players who are looking for a certain sort of games and developers who are making those sort of games. Steam is the only one that really goes hard on that, and that is not to say they're perfect at it, because there's plenty that they could do to improve that. But the thing that I like, and the thing that I think is most important for developers, not like the thing that will help developers most, is not a storefront choosing what games get elevated and what games don't. It's the storefront providing the tools to players who want to find your sort of game that allow them to find your sort of game. To me, that's the ideal. And putting up more or giving sort of soft ways in which the storefront can elevate certain games and not other games, I think is treating a symptom rather than actually treating the cause, which is there are a lot of games. There are too many games for, like, not every game is going to be successful or find an audience. There's just too many. But the root problem, I feel, is not necessarily that there are too many games. I think the root problem is that it's really hard for someone to find the exact sort of game that they want without having really good tools for doing that. And like I said, Steam is the only storefront that really tries to go hard on that, and they have not gotten there. But like in my case, and now I'm speaking as a player, not a developer, like when I go searching for stuff on Steam, I don't want to see Phasmophobia or The Finals or I don't know, Black Desert or any, like, it's not that I have a problem with these games. I'm sure they're great. I have no interest in them. Like, I don't want to see in my discovery queue. It's like, hey, maybe you would be interested in Call of Duty, like the Modern Warfare 3 or something. Like, no, I'm not. And I've done everything in my power to tell Steam I am not interested in this, because what I want to see is the weird stuff, the stuff made by like one indie developer, the stuff that no one else has really played. I want to see that. And that's not just as a developer, that's as a player. And I know there are other players like that. And the reason I know there are other players like that is because those are the guys are the reason that I have a career. Like, obviously Dusk did a lot for me, but throughout the decade, almost a decade now where I've been making games, it's constantly people who are going out of their way to try and find weird small games and are willing to risk money on them are the ones who have really kept helping me along for the long haul. So those people exist, and they want to find games to spend money on. And like, going back to me again, now back me as a player, I sometimes, in fact quite regularly, just cannot find anything that I am interested in. It's not that I can't find good games. It's not that Steam doesn't go out of its way to show me games that are probably fantastic and that hundreds of thousands of people have played and all say are fantastic or things like that. But it's that I'm always looking for something that's new and exciting and off-kilter in some way. And a lot of times I just simply can't find that, despite those games being out there. They've made strides with I love their interactive recommender thing. I think that could go even further, because even if you make it as niche and as new as possible, it's still like, no, I want to see the games with like 5 reviews, things like that. But anyway, that's all to say, that's my perspective on this, is that the thing that's healthiest for developers, and that, if done well, does also benefit players, even though, like I said, in this argument, players don't really see that much difference in benefit. Like, I think for the average player, they're going to see the most benefit from something that is just showing them the cream of the crop. But the biggest benefit for developers is not an ecosystem that arbitrarily elevates certain games more than other games based on the tastes or perspectives of a select small group of individuals. The thing that's healthiest for developers is a storefront where players actually go to find games, and that storefront having robust tools and systems in place to connect players who would want your game with your game, no matter what that game would be. And I think that really covers it. I mean, I know I'm just not the sort of person that can formulate a really concise, well thought out argument for these things. So like, yeah, that's, but hopefully that explains a little bit kind of where I'm coming from with this, and why I don't believe that any sort of curation solution is the way to do it. And I guess a few thoughts on where I think Steam could improve for this. And ultimately, this is all kind of academic anyway, because what's going to happen is that the decisions Steam makes are first and foremost going to be what benefits Valve. Like, what is going to make Valve the most money? That's because I like Valve. I think as far as big companies go and sort of almost de facto monopolies go, that's about the best and most benevolent you could get. But they're still a big company, and they're still, like, the best, least evil big company is still going to be a little bit evil. So ultimately, Valve is going to do whatever's going to benefit Valve. Any benefit to either players or developers is just going to be a side effect of that. So really, it kind of doesn't matter what you believe in this case, because ultimately, if Valve's going to do stuff with their storefront that'll benefit them, if making small niche games discoverable is a benefit for them, awesome, that's going to benefit developers. But So anyway, I wanted to talk about my thoughts on that a little bit and make a video that is now 20 minutes. I don't know if anything that I said in this video is going to be more than just incoherent rambling, but like I said, you guys seem to like this sort of thing last time, so I'll post it and see what you think. So yeah, thank you for watching. I'll talk to you later.